are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. Miseducation and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Yeah. Small little snarl, we all make it more. Small little snarl, we all make it
Oh, yeah. What am I do? What am I try? Can't believe I'm gonna judge one another. What I do? What I try? One kick it out when you see you climb on the ladder. What am I do? What am I try? Me no mix with them, me no deal with backstabber. What do you do? Listen what me say. The kind go like man kind of don't know that love is everything me say. Some are one but some roll good all day. Tell it already but me tell them again. Why them a drive us insane? Why? The children should know the life it's equal for all. Not judge one another, that will soon make you fall. Brothers and sisters unite, this is the call. Me taking off the Mount Zion, yeah boy. What am I do? What am I try? Can't believe I'm gonna judge one another. What I do? What I try? One kick it out when you see you climb on the ladder. What am I do? What am I try? Me no mix with them, me no deal with backstabber. What do you do? Listen what me say. Listen when me sing, say the wicked. Know that we all should live true. When time get dark, no man can stop in them shoe. When the wicked get cut off enough, no way fi move them on a Babylon system. Prove them a fool. Why them off him, move them way them mind.
got a nice movie mic there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. We are live, and we are coming to you from lifestyleradio.net and from our sister station found at 420radio.ca. I'm your host, Al Graham. After a bit of a medical break, we are once again coming to you from the front window of Canada's in downtown Campbellford. So if you're in the area, stop on by. Get involved in the conversation. Today, my joint host is Alicia Yashcheshen, and she is a guest who works to help educate people with their cannabis medication as well as getting access. But before we learn more about our guests, it's time for Alicia and I to have a chat. Hello, Alicia. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm much better that I'm on this side of the hospital, I'll tell you, than being inside one.
Nice.
Yes.
Glad to hear.
Yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying being, especially the weather like this that we're getting here in Ontario. Summer has finally arrived, I think.
Oh, really? Just now?
It seems like it, I'll tell you. We haven't had a super hot summer over here, I can tell you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hasn't been good at all. So, let's see. Before we bring in our guests, we've got a couple of news items that we're going to discuss. And I see here Vice News has got some information on the new Ontario cannabis proposal, what they're going to do for their CCBO. I don't know whether you've caught that article or not, but I'm sure you've heard about the announcement.
Oh, I have, yeah.
Yeah. Right off the top, here in the article, they talk about 40 stores. Like, how can they open up with only 40 stores? And you only have 150 when they're done. Like, they got over 500 alcohol stores.
Well, my hope is that not only will the cannabis community, but the larger community in itself will boycott these businesses because they're unauthentic. They're selling a product that is subpar at probably high prices, and they think that they're going to push out those dedicated activists who have risked their civil liberties for years upon years, and they think that we're just going to take a walk. And unfortunately, that's not how business works.
That's right, exactly. And you know, I was at Al and myself and Kim. We were at the Karma Cup on the weekend doing the road show, and I can tell you the place was just packed, and that's what it mainly was, is things that, you know, the government hasn't even listed yet as legal. But yet this place was just, people were there voting with their feet, you know, with their money.
Well, and the thing is the Ontario government is like a big, the way I see it, it's like they're a big pack of pigs all trying to compete to the trough. And it'll be that those first generation of pigs who will get quashed, right?
Yeah.
It's just not a market to be able to sell cannabis and alcohol in the same regard. That you're talking about apples and oranges.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that they think that they're going to be successful or profitable really makes me laugh.
Yeah, and they're trying to say that, you know, well, you can just call up the producer and they'll just mail it to you. Well, that ain't going to solve a lot of issues. I see also here that they want everybody to, they don't want any lounges either. Like,
well,
you know,
and that's
cannabis
a big thing that's a big thing in Colorado right now, is that the public has said, no, this is discrimination. The fact that you can go to an establishment, aka a bar, and ingest alcohol, but you can't do the same with cannabis. That's a gross violation of our rights, and it's discrimination. There's no reason why you can't have a vape lounge. I mean, hookah lounges have existed forever and a day, and there's never been any issues. Like, ask any police service, do you get called to the hookah lounge or do you get called to the local bar? It's always the bar.
But it's always the bar. They spend piles and piles of money in Toronto every weekend dealing with the entertainment district. Yet the lounges, you know, you don't even hear a peep out of them.
Well, exactly. And so policing those lounges, as far as I'm concerned, is a waste of my tax dollars that could be going to productive use of police resources and government resources. Because at the end of the day, the government often forgets that we pay their wages. They may think that they run the show, but it's we pay your wages. We pay our taxes, which pays your wages. And I just think that when bureaucrats forget that, that's when stuff gets hairy, especially with Ontario and their new stores that they think are going to be AKA dispensaries. But it just goes to show you how naive Mr. Trudeau is and how he thinks.
Oh, yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I also, I don't want to go through the whole thing because there's going to be some stuff we're going to want to discuss with our guests. But also, the last thing I want to mention here is that they want, they say, private residence only. So, like, you know, people who are using it recreationally wouldn't be able to walk down the street smoking a joint like you could smoke a cigarette. They're acting it more like alcohol, where you can't consume alcohol out on the street.
Okay, but what's the rationale or the reasonable basis behind that prohibition? Like Jody Emery keeps saying that this new legalization model is Prohibition 2.0, and I agree, because you're putting all of these stipulations, which are asinine, they don't make sense, just to regulate something, and it causes more civil rights violations than it prevents. So what are we doing? Right?
Yeah, exactly. We may be gaining something, but we're losing stuff as well.
Oh, far more than what, you know, and at the end of the day, like prohibition and the people who have fueled legalization need to be recognized. Those civil liberties that have been taken from thousands and thousands of Canadians, that needs to be made right.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see what happens as this goes on, because there was a very interesting article I read online that was put together by some lawyers, and they just ripped into this new plan. They see holes all through it. So, all right. One more thing before we bring our guest in, and that is today. Well, actually, all this week, C-45 cannabis hearings are going on by the federal government, and today John Conroy was in there from 8:30 to 10:30 on a panel discussing household cultivation of plants.
Nice.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I missed it. It would have been very interesting to catch. And there was also another fellow there from the Canadian Federation of Apartment Associations. So I could just imagine what he was saying.
Oh, he's probably totally against cannabis cultivation. But in the same regard, if you put rules in place that make sense, that's where you need regulation, not policing whether or not you can walk down the street and smoke a joint, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's okay for you to inhale secondhand tobacco smoke that we know that leads to all kinds of death and illnesses, but yet you can't consume by accident the same as tobacco and the cannabis smoke, which hasn't caused any issues. So silly laws. They'll see as time goes on how wrong they were. Okay, well, this time let's bring in our guest into the program. How's that? What do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll welcome the person I described as a person who likes to help educate people about the cannabis education as well as getting access for them. I'd like to welcome Mike Francis to the Pace Radio Show. Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing tonight, everybody?
I'm doing not too bad. And Alicia?
I'm good, but it's raining here, so I'm quite chilly. So not used to that because it's been quite hot here, but nonetheless, I'll suck it up. But that's I think at some point right now.
Yeah, where I'm from, we're getting some rain too, and it's needed. I'll tell you, I'm happy to see it. Although maybe some would say it's a little late.
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
Today was like 26, sunny, and all I got right now is darkness.
Oh.
The days are obviously getting shorter, which is a little sad too.
Yes, it is. The weather is actually finally, for us here anyways, getting a little drier and warmer, and the days are getting shorter. The colors are changing on the trees. You see lots of red out there right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alicia.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm due for a season change. I'd like to wear my boots and my fall attire, so I'm totally good to go.
Yeah.
It's cold.
Isn't that cool that we're talking about the seasons changing, and we're at this time in Canada and with cannabis where things sure seem to be changing too.
Exactly, and there's always going to be bumps along the way, and improvements are required. Like here in Ontario, we just finally got alcohol in grocery stores, and it's been almost 100 years since alcohol's been legal, right? So hopefully we don't have to wait 100 years for something like that on the cannabis issue.
Oh, we haven't,
prior to working
since 1923.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There's something to be said. Oh, sorry. There's something to be said about that what you're saying about alcohol there, and although the discussion of cannabis and alcohol is often usually too close together for my comfort, I'll say this. I used to work in distribution and convenience stores, and I was working in Quebec. And in Quebec for a number of years, they've been selling beer and wine in their stores. And you'd be in these neighborhoods where they would also have a little bakery put in there, and you could really feel the community in a way that I didn't feel like in other parts of Canada. And I hope that with cannabis dispensaries, we'll be adding to the community, not impacting the community in a negative fashion as well.
It's right, exactly, and there's been benefits to the communities where some of the dispensaries have gone. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I mean, like you were alluding to or talking a little bit about in the news, and it's been a hot topic of conversation in the dispensary lately. Is the announcement made by the Ontario provincial government there, and the nationalization, I suppose you could say, of cannabis dispensaries there under the LCBO. And, because Ontario is such a big part of Canada, everybody in Saskatchewan is thinking automatically that this is going to mean the same thing here for us. And, I sure hope not, and I sure hope what happens in Ontario, I hope that the grassroots sticks together, keeps the private dispensaries that have been serving some dispensaries and some people very well there, and hopefully, get rid of this sort of ridiculous notion that we need to have the government involved in this to protect us for some reason.
Oh,
yes.
I know. It's like the government hasn't been protecting us since like 1923. It's like ingest a bunch of pharmaceuticals, aka medicine, instead of cannabis. Like the government and this safety approach is really asinine and backwards as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Well, when I hear,
here with that system that they're talking about, when I can remember, like when I was like 18, 20 years of age, going in a liquor store and having to fill out a piece of paper and telling them what I want, and they went into the back of the store and got it. And it's just like, here we are almost 40 years later trying to do this exactly the same thing with cannabis. Like, we've evolved.
We have. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This leads me to something, and it's an interesting part of this, and I don't think it gets discussed enough. But because of the cannabis's nature, there's this. People want to make it seem like alcohol and treat it like alcohol in the way that alcohol has been distributed, and I think like the notion, for example, with LPs and one of the LPs that I was used to dealing with, their pricing was strictly based on the level of THC in the flower. And to me, that's almost like the alcoholization of cannabis, because we're looking for a similarity to make it seem similar so that we can deal with it in a similar way so people are similarly comfortable or something along those lines. Maybe that's a little bit too much similar. But at the end of the day, cannabis is not alcohol. And the THC factor shouldn't even be it should probably be consideration, of course, but it shouldn't be the key consideration.
It doesn't cost any more to grow six plants with high THC versus plants with low THC. Like, it's the same cost. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess the point that I was trying to make at the beginning of that is that I think people outside of cannabis, and people probably inside too, look to other places that are similar, and then that's where this LCBO thing in Ontario comes up. Well, they've been doing it with this other substance that has been restricted and previously prohibited, so they can do the same thing with that. And I guess it's unfortunate for everything, especially you folks that have been working so hard and putting your names out there and really, facing prosecution and doing all these things to get the message of cannabis outright. It's sort of, bittersweet for the government to come out and act like this now. I don't know. It's obviously frustrating.
Yeah. What do you think about some of this stuff? Like, they only want to have 40 stores. Like, just in Toronto alone, they had 100 and some odd. Like, as far as dispensaries.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's just the government being modest. I think if there's money in it, they're going to run with it. And to even put a number on where they're going to where they're going to stop printing money with this. Like, I mean, if things really start working out well for them, are they going to really get to that point and say, well, we're just not going to make any stores anymore because we said we're not? I think they'll just be, they'll just keep rocking and rolling with it and absolutely. Hopefully again, people will boycott those stores and keep the good dispensaries that have been keeping everybody in Ontario happy. I know a lot of people where I'm from that travel to Toronto are, coming back with all sorts of excellent stories. And it's really great to hear, especially like here in Saskatchewan where, we're not so dispensary rich. We don't have much population to sustain them, I suppose. But at the end of the day, this whole thing that's happening there and has been spreading around Canada is interesting and beautiful, I would say. And to just arbitrarily say we're going to take this thing and knock it down and we're going to do it our way, it just doesn't give it's not giving any credit to those who worked so hard to make this happen. I think it's a real slap in the face.
Well, right from the beginning of all this, over the last 2 years, it was pretty obvious that the people who've been in with the community weren't going to be involved unless they became an LP.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that got me really interested in getting to work on the activism and also in the dispensaries in a place where we're maybe not supposed to have them yet, is because myself, I've been around cannabis all my life. I'm one of these people that comes from a multi-generational cannabis family. I've got stories on both my mom and father's side that go back really to the 1950s personally. And as a person who kind of came up in the world, joined Army Cadets, learned how to play the bagpipes, I was in a very square set of people, and it was a long time, maybe a bit of I wouldn't want to say a source of shame, but it wasn't something to be very proud of. Now that being said, these other people that are capitalizing on this now didn't give a crap about cannabis in the past, and the only reason they want to have anything to do with it is because of the money. So those people that have been involved and have been fighting the fight and living with this all their life should step up to the plate. And I challenge anybody that's listening, let's look for another way to say it that's not cliche, but let's come out about our cannabis use. Let's show people that there's doctors, lawyers, school teachers, priests, social workers, anybody you can imagine is using cannabis. And we need to come out and stand together and show Canada what this is really about. I mean, and this can lead obviously to so many ways. Police chiefs talking about budgeting and not being able to be ready to have their police departments ready for the sort of drug testing that they're going to need. What's happening right now? What are all of us that are using cannabis and driving doing? Are we all taking the bus?
Correct. Exactly. All of a sudden, the market won't be flooded with millions and millions of people who are consuming cannabis and driving, because they say, there's already people doing it now. Yet, it's the same thing with the youth end. They're worried about the youth end of it all, but yet we don't see any zombie youth walking around town. All of us have been using cannabis, I'm sure, a long time while it was prohibited. And I would say that prohibition is probably causes more cannabis use in vehicles and more impaired driving than in a legalized world, in as much as when you're in a place where cannabis is not allowed and you need a private place to smoke, sometimes it happens in your car and it might happen on the way somewhere. Yep.
For sure.
So
my biggest question, though, for these LPs is that the stock market has largely indicated that they don't have these billion-dollar endeavors like they're purporting. They have to keep getting financing and investors because they're blowing through money left and right, and they're not recouping the costs and a profit. So most of these LPs are like near bankruptcy, and people don't realize that. Like, check the stock market and all of the key players who play in the cannabis stock market. That's where the dollars and cents are, and that's what the market has said, is that you guys are full of BS. Like, you're not collecting the dollars that you're purporting the cannabis industry is worth, right?
I think that there's, wherever there's corruption and wherever there's things wrong, you end up with these dirty situations that just don't make any sense. And I think that's exactly what this is. It's a quagmire of sorts, and over-regulating and creating these profit centers. And again, back to what I was saying before. When I think of some of these LPs, they remind me more of tobacco or alcohol, the beginnings of big tobacco and big alcohol. And I see them as they're just trying to put the infrastructure in place so that when things happen, that you're going to end up with these big players. And if you were lucky enough to have been a police chief or a politician that knew somebody that could get you on the board of one of these places, like, Bob's your uncle, and isn't that guy laughing? And how many people was this particular police officer responsible for incarcerating for cannabis related crimes? Or
that politician that voted for that law to put you in jail, and now all of a sudden they're leading up the big CEOs of these companies.
Well, and they think that they're cash cows, and they're simply not, because they don't have the background, the history, the knowledge like the cannabis community does. Like, look at the use of that pesticide, or it was a fertilizer that made a bunch of people sick. They're being class action sued over it.
Yeah.
So
doesn't this lead to another thing that
Okay, one at a time.
Sorry about that, Alicia.
Oh no!
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. You get to go.
The point that I'm sort of getting from Alicia that I think just makes a lot of sense is that because of I don't think this is exactly what she's saying, but this is what she's saying to me. There seems to be this thing that anything that has to do with cannabis is going to be a lot of money, and you don't even have to really work very well with it. You just have to have it, and it's going to go. I have to admit, it sort of reminds me of an old grower I know that was doing pretty well in the 80s and the early 1990s. He could he could grow just about anything, and he might have been getting as much as $3,000 a pound for this stuff, and that attitude, though, is that just because it's cannabis, it doesn't matter how good the quality is or how well you're running your business. You're going to make enough money and you're going to make it work. And I think that's absolutely not true. You need to have people that are passionate about that, just like any other successful business. Anybody that opens up a restaurant and starts cooking hamburgers isn't going to be successful. But somebody that does something well, somebody that opens up something that the people really want and is passionate about it, they're going to succeed. And it's the same thing in cannabis. In fact, cannabis probably needs it more because the plant is so complex and nobody's done any research about it. The people that love it and have actually been around it are the only people that might be able to understand it enough to sort of decode it for the population.
Yeah, well, because 90 years of propaganda, well, almost 100 years now. Propaganda. It's got to be taken down bit by bit over time.
And I guess doesn't that give maybe people that are in the cannabis and it has to give everybody a little bit of pause, because even people that are strongly against us, sometimes I think they're victims of the prohibition as much as those of us have been prosecuted or harangued for being involved with cannabis, in as much as that when everybody in your life and every person of authority and every teacher and every person tells you something is bad, you're going to probably believe it's bad, and it's going to take a little bit of deprogramming to come out of that. And I know sometimes, even being a person that's pro-cannabis and being around other people, I was with my mother somewhere recently and talking to somebody who was sick, but they weren't interested in cannabis. My mom was pushing it a little bit, and I could tell the person was getting very uncomfortable. And I know what my mom was doing. She just wanted to help, because that's all we want to do is help. But you have to have that person make that first decision for themselves, obviously.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, exactly. But all you can do is supply them with the information and help them make a educated assessment on it or decision on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I know that. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, and debunking those stereotypes that largely come with cannabis use, like the whole Bob Marley thing, or
everybody thinks we're all
tie-dye, or
everybody thinks we're all Cheech and Chongs instead of thinking that Cheech and Chong was a good actor of a person who smoked cannabis.
That's right. And then those stereotypes, and that's a little bit what I was saying before, is we need to, people that are using cannabis, it's time to step out. It's time to to let people know that you're doing this, because we need to break these stereotypes. I know myself, a lot of people that met me, some are quite surprised. I've used to be in an occupation where open cannabis use was largely frowned upon, and so I was kind of quiet about it, and I'd moved in my in my 30s and changed cities, and I didn't really know anybody, so it was sort of a weird place to be in. But what's awesome is being able to reconnect with these people and to find, like that wouldn't have bugged them anyways, but it's very liberating to be honest with yourself and to be honest with the world. This prohibition is not anybody who uses this cannabis's fault, and we have to, people have to start coming out and admitting their use that aren't your typical people, And I mean, obviously, you want every police officer and medical doctor to come out first, but just everybody, we just have to talk about it. We have to become comfortable with it because, in my previous occupation, I was a transit operator. So I was driving a city bus around. I'd taken my education in history and French, and people say, "What you do with that?" And I say, "Well, you can become an excellent transit operator." Anyways,
there's merit to what you've studied, though. Like, there's that misconception too about like.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, no, absolutely. No. I'm just teasing. I had I didn't just choose that. I liked working in transit and stuff like that. But that would be a good arts degree joke.
Yeah, for sure.
But sorry.
All right, okay, it's break time, commercial time. Time to hear a little bit of music, hear some commercials. Okay, and maybe when we come back, we can find out a little bit about Mike and the business he's with. So tonight, our bumpers music is featured by the Killing Time Band. The song is called "Don't Be Bitter," and Catherine Wynn, don't be bitter at us, cannabis community. We don't like your CCBO plan. So when we return, we'll continue our talk with our guest, Mike Francis. This is the Pace Radio Show, live on lifestyleradio.net and .ca. Live on lifestyleradio.net.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
When someone's pissing you off, don't get angry. No. Reach in your pocket and get stoned, my friend.
Okay.
Don't be bitter, just smoke a one-hitter. The whole world's going down a shitter.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
CTCP now operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CTCP.
Man, have you been to Canadays yet? Canadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck, Crop King, and wholesaler Nexus. Canadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Canadays. Have your say without saying a word. Canadays.ca.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
Listen to the words I'm singing. Yeah, everybody knows when your temper blows, just take a step back when it comes to blows. And baby, just rethink it.
Hello, we're back. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show. We are live here at lifestyleradio.ca. But you can also find us over at Spreaker, Shoutcast, and TuneIn, all live. Plus, don't forget, if you're in the area around Canadays here in Campbellford, stop on in. Actually, there's a fellow in here right now. Tune in Lifestyle Radio this Friday night as Al and the 420 crew return to talk baking with Mary Jane Baker. Learn about why she became a cannabis advocate to what her favorite baked goods are. So tune in this Friday night here at Lifestyle Radio, 7 p.m. with Al and the guys as they return with their guest, Mary Jane, who will be baking up a storm. Today on the show, we are joined by my joint host, Alicia, Yashcheshen, and our guest, Mike Francis. And we haven't even mentioned where you're from or anything. So before you get to tell me that, I'm going to hand you over to Alicia and let her get some questions in about you and the business.
Cool.
All right, Alicia, you're up.
Sounds good. So, Mike, I guess kind of take us back to when you were like, that realization, like, I'm a cannabis activist, or this matters to me. What was your experience, and how did you had mentioned that you come from generational cannabis advocates. So what brought you here today?
Yeah, this is a long and interesting story, and I'm happy to share it with you guys. And if I start droning on too long, just say, Mike, that's enough.
Okay, well, you got 20 minutes until the break.
Okay, well, no, that's I think I can squeeze it in. So
okay,
anyways. I grew up in a family where my mom was using cannabis. And my mom and my own father actually passed away when I was quite young, but I had a stepdad. And I remember on my Mr. Muggs book why my dad was rolling his cigarettes on there and tapping the seeds out. But you have to remember, this is like the late 70s and early 80s. We wouldn't want to seeing too many seeds today. Anyways, but so I guess seeing it like that around all my life. I had an uncle who, at a very young age, when I was very young, he was suffering from extreme back pain. He was a tar roofer, and so he was taking all sorts of crazy painkillers, like well, I remember Halcyon was the name of one of them, and anyways, those level of sort of painkillers. So he had got into cannabis and became a cannabis farmer and began growing cannabis in around Govan, Saskatchewan, and was doing pretty well at it and got himself off of all of his medication. And this is the 80s and 90s, so things were a little bit different there, and I suppose the differences between recreational and medical were a little bit different, and people were using it recreationally and medically, although I suppose I would argue now that we were probably all using it a little bit medically. And then this actual a friend of mine that I went to high school with became an RCMP officer. And at his first posting, ended up doing a bust and ended up busting my uncle. And that bust, and just a thing of irony there, just a little taste. And it was a pretty good friend of mine who, I won't mention him or anything like that, but I was surprised when he'd become a police officer. We had done some things that were unbecoming a police officer before that. Anyways, this actually led to the and I don't want to sound too dramatic, but it actually led to the death of my uncle. The grief and stress caused by the bust of his farm and all of everything that went along with it, bankrupted him, and he was still suffering from this back pain and surgeries and stuff, and led him to some morphine and a staph infection after multiple operations, and he died. So my whole life, having that going along with me while I come myself out of the sort of the Canadian social experiment. I used to kid around. My mom, for those of you that are in Ontario and stuff like that, I was born in Toronto, and I grew up in Regent Park, just by Cabbagetown there, and that's a kind of a notorious neighborhood in Canada now. But in my childhood, it was I remember it very fondly. It was just like growing up at Sesame Street, and I moved from there to some social housing in Regina, Saskatchewan, and sort of a similar place. But growing up with a single mother, I was very excited and able to benefit from kind of the things that were going on in Canada that time. I joined Army Cadets, and I learned how to play music because of that, and it became a very important part of my life. But I always used cannabis, and much of it was a closeted experience. It was never very much a social thing. It was always a familial thing for me because this is what we were doing in my family. But in the outside world, it wasn't. And it was interesting to me because as a person who's living like that, and you're sort of a closeted cannabis person from a closeted cannabis family in a world that doesn't celebrate cannabis, I would go out and not be able to use cannabis and end up drinking and do all sorts of crazy things. People think I was a crazy partier. What they didn't understand is that I never drank that much before, because at my family we were always using cannabis.
The safer alternative.
So the legal alternative, which has caused me, and many others, much more, issues. I didn't have any problems or anything because of alcohol necessarily, but definitely the hangovers and stuff like that wasn't something that I enjoyed. But more recently, when I was in my 20s, I'd worked my way through sort of a sales career, and my wife and I put myself back through school, and I had got some education, and I was at that time started doing some work. A friend of mine and I were doing a little bit of advocacy sort of behind the scenes with some people that were working with the Liberal Party back in the early 2000s and stuff like that, and this is with the federal Liberals, but like any other thing, I had to kind of walk away from that and earn a living and work. So kind of put my political work and my work that I would consider more towards cannabis activism a little bit on the back burner. Then more recently, a friend of mine in Saskatchewan started a storefront dispensary, which you've interviewed the gentleman before. His name's Pat Warnicki. I'm sure you remember Pat's interview from the summer there. But I've been talking to Pat about working with cannabis, and I was always very fond of the activism and the work that Best Buds was doing for all of its patients in Regina there, and I really wanted to get involved. And the job that I was working at, I had a job with the government here in Saskatchewan, and I was working for an organization that was actually phased out. It was a Crown corporation that was sort of halted in our operations here in Saskatchewan. So I just found myself out of a job because I was made redundant, and this the sort of things were just happening, and I ended up working in a dispensary. One thing led to another, and now we're sort of in a phase of opening up more dispensaries, and more so than opening up dispensaries, we're working to educate the public and help people as much as we can with medical cannabis in Saskatchewan. And because of all the change that's going on, and there's so much, but Saskatchewan is such an incredibly awesome place, and the one thing that we are really good at here is agriculture, and cannabis is something that is grown and is put in, into the human supply chain. I think that's kind of agriculture. So I think it'd be great if we could leverage Saskatchewan's agricultural expertise to help make Canada, a world leader. I mean, actually, I shouldn't even say help make Canada, reinforce Canada as a world leader in cannabis, because we already are.
Yes, we are.
And I totally admire the agricultural application of cannabis and hemp, but I was recently apprised of this little fact that I didn't know, and it hurts my heart because I come from generations of farmers, right, that came from Ukraine, is that the federal government wanted, by the year 2000, to eradicate the local small farmer, in that they created a program called Farm Credit Canada. And so they would loan farmers money to buy land, knowing that these farmers would never, ever be able to pay that loan back because their inputs and outputs were just astronomical. Like they've made it so that local farming, small farming, is nearly impossible. And so I didn't know this, but the federal government has taken, by virtue of foreclosures and bankruptcies and etc., most of the land. Like, how many local farmers in Saskatchewan actually can make it and turn a profit is really troublesome. And I attribute the dark days of farming to the way in which the government has created Farm Credit Canada.
Well, I'm sure,
and
with farming that too, I think just more to what Alicia's saying, that there's been a proliferation of large farms in Saskatchewan, which has changed Saskatchewan, and other agricultural places incredibly, but especially in Saskatchewan, we used to have quite a ratio of small towns and that compared to cities here, and that's changed quite a bit. And I think, like what Alicia's saying, creation of things like that Farm Credit Canada, had probably helped some farmers buy up other farmers, and the ones with a lot of land probably do better. And then, of course, there's corporations that are buying farms and all those sort of things. But this is where I think cannabis can come in, because there are small farmers that have held on out there. And you know what? Yeah. Right now, there's small farmers all across Canada who are growing good cannabis. And I shouldn't say good, they're probably growing great cannabis, and they're doing it very well. And by every other action of theirs, they're probably law-abiding citizens, and I consider them totally law-abiding citizens because I don't believe in the unlawful prohibition. So what can we do to legitimize those people? And maybe that's a way that a small farmer can get back up. And in rural Saskatchewan, aside from small farms, there's a lot of First Nations people and First Nations reserves where, where they placed, where reservations were, or the reserve lands were placed, wasn't necessarily like in an economically great place. Maybe this is something that where maybe, a cannabis agricultural operation that's growing world-class cannabis can ship their product down to Las Vegas. Maybe this is something that we can benefit from. But I mean, these are very complicated things, and I'm telling you, I'm talking about things that I don't understand very well.
A friend of mine, he's involved with a group with the Indigenous community, working in order to get them involved in the cannabis in industries and creating jobs and everything. And talking about farmers, there was an article last week in the paper about from, I believe it was Kitchener, where the mayor was saying that, why weren't farmers given the opportunity to grow an alternative crop?
Yeah. Well, and just like hemp, right? We could be rich off of hemp in Saskatchewan, but if your government has no inclination to help fuel that richness, then it's going to die. It's like the film and film tax credit. We used to have people.
The Saskatchewan film tax credit. Yeah.
We had people come from all over the world to shoot movies here, and Brad Wald's government was like, "Oh no, I don't like that economic viability. Let's crush it." And so they did. And so lots of those people within Saskatchewan lost their livelihoods because of a bad bureaucratic decision, and that is unlawful in itself, or should be.
Conservatives look at spending any tax money as bad spending.
Well,
Unfortunately, they do that to help create jobs and economic benefits too. So.
Well, and in a place like Saskatchewan, and what makes it hurt here a little bit more is that we only have 1 million people spread over this giant population, so we're a true hinterland. There's and so these little programs and stuff get cut, and we really feel it here. But hey, again, I guess I'm so excited about what's happening with cannabis and what's happening in the world right now with cannabis that I want to say, you know what? They can take all their problems and deal with them. Let's take cannabis and let's help fix this stuff.
Yeah.
The only thing that kind of irks me about this whole legalization and wow, all of a sudden cannabis is so good after 100 years of propaganda and reefer madness is that they're excluding the experts. And it's like, Mr. Trudeau, you aren't an expert in feminism or cannabis because you're a rich, pretty boy. You know what I mean? How can you relate to the average Canadian being sucking the trust fund from your father? And that's why I say that, candidates like Nikki Ashton need to be put into power so that the everyday Canadians can be heard. As far as I'm concerned, I'm done with the trust fund kids. They're spoiled rich kids who, they'll be rich regardless if they, create a cannabis program that works or not, right? So,
well, I'll tell you what, Alicia.
That's what
you saw my hair today. You saw my hair today. And I'm just saying, I don't have any for the listeners on the radio. Looking at my hair, it's a very shiny experience. So what I'm saying is I love his hair. I love his hair, and so I love his hair so much I can't say a bad thing about him.
Well, he took something like cannabis that was in society. A lot of people, especially the people who voted, were concerned and all that. And now it's a regular conversation that goes on between radio shows, newspapers, everything. So it's really, obviously brought up the conversation. And it's going to probably suck in the beginning.
We're at a watershed moment.
Yeah, we are. Exactly. We are. We're at a big moment in time. And there's no way it's going to be perfect. And there's no way it's going to make millions of people happy. But, well, that one lawyer article says, well, it's a start anyways, but, there's lots of room for improvement.
Well, I characterize the can... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for those of us that have been around cannabis, and for those people that are listening to this that have not been around cannabis, I, as a reasonable and rational person, have seen this around me all my life, and everything that I've heard has contradicted what I've seen with my own eyes. And that's what people have to see. And we do have places we can look. We can look to Colorado. You know what? Colorado, it hasn't exploded. If anything's exploded, it's been the property values and the increased benefit of life that everybody's enjoying there, that a lot of people are largely attributing to the legalization of cannabis.
Yeah, not even including the benefits to society, like through the funding of school systems and stuff like that, and the healthcare that they've added to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where I think, you know what, let's take the naysayers and you know, dealing with legalization, that's one thing. I think that this leads us to a whole other line of things and future conversations that I hope I get to have with you. But I mean, we have to talk about how are we going to protect medical patients with the incoming and pending legalization, you know, and how can maybe we use that to help propel arguments about legitimizing the craft market of cannabis.
Yeah, I've had some patients ask me, well, you know, if we're not allowed to smoke publicly, how are we going to medicate when we're out? You know, and this is something we have to
deal with, and I'm somebody that kind of used to like the old days when people could drink or smoke in places that they drank. In as much as even as a cannabis user in those old days, it wasn't as obvious to return into the bar full of smoke that you just went out and had some, you know, really good smoke. I can remember my first. This is a cool little anecdote. There's a band that was playing in Regina. It's not important who they were playing, but it was a really good band. And third song in, and I'd been taking a little bit of a break, nothing serious, just to get my tolerance back a little bit. And my friend said to me, you want to go smoke one? It was third song in. We went outside and smoked one. It was wonderful. Walked back in, felt like I was watching Led Zeppelin. And then the whole crowd turned and looked at us because all they could smell was us, because nobody was smoking cigarettes there anymore. You know, and I was like, oh, things have changed. Like, let's get these friggin' cigarettes back in the bar right now.
And people stink, right? Like, I remember going to the bar after you couldn't smoke in there, and you could really smell like other human beings in the bar. Did you ever notice that? Like back in the young days,
you know,
bar hopping days. But you know,
I had one friend that used to never smoke cigarettes, and we'd all be smoking cigarettes at a party, and this guy'd be holding his T-shirt over his mouth, and I'd say to him, "Oh, you're crazy, man. Like, what are you thinking?" And now I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what he was thinking.
Yeah.
But really, though, how can we deal with this? Okay, let's say, okay, burning cannabis, you know, maybe that's a bit of an odor that's pretty strong. Can we meet somewhere like vaping, you know? And then can we please like negotiate where we can have an enjoyable vape lounge or vaping cafe?
Yeah.
You know, people that use cannabis.
In the announcement, I believe it was Monday there by the provincial government, a reporter did ask the minister, you know, are you looking at licensing establishments to allow people to consume cannabis there, like people go out and buy a beer at a bar? And he actually responded and said that yes, that would be something that they would look at, but it needs more studying. So, you know, yeah, unfortunately,
that's
it needs more
another
studying.
excuse, right?
Yeah,
but here we go though. You know, we
for
just had this
200
little,
years.
But we had this conversation about cigarette smoke, and there's a lot of people that use cannabis that probably don't mind that they go to a restaurant and they don't have to smell cigarette smoke anymore. So that's why I think, you know, there probably is more. Maybe there's a little more that has to be done only on the aspect of the smoking, because if we're telling tobacco smokers they can't smoke in public, I would feel like a hypocrite to say, well, I'm a medical patient, I get to smoke. You know what? I am a medical patient, and I do want to be able to smoke, but I do want to work with being, you know, if secondhand smoke is an issue, and if that's the argument for why we don't have smoking in establishments, well, then I don't want any secondhand smoke. So what can we do this? You know, we know that vaping is different. We know that smoking concentrates are different. Can we have a concentrate lounge? Can we have a dab tender? You know, these are things that we want. You know, I foresee a future where you're going to walk into a place and you're going to say, yeah, I want a dab of sativa with some mycene and some limonene terpenes in there. And I think that can happen. And people could enjoy and benefit from this, you know, and my, oh my, wouldn't that make going and hanging around the waterfront in Toronto or in Saskatoon so much funner?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I know here in Ontario at one time, I had a list of over 20 different lounges that you could go to, from Northern Ontario, Ottawa, down towards Sarnia, Toronto. And
really?
Yeah. At one time back in 2012 in Toronto, because there were so many of them that they were looking at coming up with some type of regulations and calling them medical marijuana consumption facilities.
And that when I was talking with joking voice and stuff, I'm speaking on a more recreational level. I think that smokers and medical patients deserve a little bit more rights right now.
Yeah,
and again, when I'm speaking light about some of this stuff, I'm sort of excited about what's happening for us. So I just want to qualify that. I don't want any of our medical cannabis users to think that I'm speaking lightly about any of these very serious things that people fought so hard for. So
I haven't taken you that way. But I should let everybody know, tongue-tied, that we're going to go to a commercial break now.
Cool.
All right, and that we're going to hear some more music by the Killing Time Band with the song "Don't Be Bitter," and then when we get back, Alicia and I will continue our talk with Mike. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show here on LifestyleRadio.net and .ca.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Don't be bitter, just smoke a one-hitter. Whole world's going down a shitter. It don't mean no thing, it ain't another by taking away. Listen to the words that I'm singing.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
BMA offers cannabinoid testing, so if you want to prove you've got good medicine, head to BMA Hydroponics and prove it.
Man, have you been to Canadays yet? Canadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck, Crop King, and wholesaler Nexus. Canadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Canadays. Have your say without saying a word. Canadays.ca.
Hi, this is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on LifestyleRadio.ca.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Got a pain or two, you don't know what to do, just listen, my friend, here's what to do, just smoke this shit and feel amazing. I forget all the hot big farmers alive, take a big toke, reach for the sky, and baby, just forget it. Don't be bitter, smoke on bitter.
Hey, we're back. Thanks for tuning in the program. And Kathleen Wynn, don't be bitter, but we don't like your plan. We are being broadcasted live, as always, here at lifestyleradio.net. And, you know, if you miss a live show, you can always catch the podcast. It's available at Mixcloud, YouTube, iTunes. And, you know, if you live in the U.S., there's always iHeartRadio. Tonight's bumper music, Killing Time Band. The song, as I mentioned, Don't Get Better. If you enjoyed it and you want to hear some more of their music, you can go to killingtimeband.com and you can catch it there. Today on the program, we are joined by our guest, Mike Francis of BBS Saskatoon, and joint host, Alicia Yashcheshen. Well, Alicia and Mike, we're into the last segment, and I'm going to let Alicia get things rolling.
Sounds good. So, Mike, in your opinion, how are things going to look in terms of previous cannabis convictions and crimes? What do you think that should happen?
Well, you know, there was some discussion. I remember if the Prime Minister, they were talking about this, and the Prime Minister was talking about an anecdote with when his brother had been caught with a few joints in a Sucret's case after a minor accident or something on the Trans-Canada Highway in British Columbia, and his dad made some phone calls and got him off. And they were, he was, I believe in that same conversation, he'd alluded to, you know, once we do this, then we'll look at that. Now, myself, I believe that we need, people that have cannabis convictions need to be able to apply and get a full pardon, especially if these convictions had to do with were related to no other crime. Now, obviously, when dealing with crime and cannabis and every other thing, it's much more complicated than that. So let's hope that, you know, provincially or federally, whatever level it has to be done, that there's going to be, you know, parole people or people from the corrections who are going to be able to help people get these records removed from their things so they can travel abroad. I mean, I have my own brother. I have a twin brother. For a few years, there's a famous festival called Craven in Saskatchewan, and you know, I don't know, Lisa, you probably heard that country.
It used to be called Rock in the Valley, remember? Back in the day.
And it was Rock. Well, this happened at Rock in the Valley. For a few years in the early 2000s, they changed it from country to rock. Thank God. and a friend and my brother and a friend of his were with a group of people, and they were having a little puff off of a pipe. The friend had a puff, passed it to my brother. My brother put it in his mouth, and the RCMP officer put it in the light in his face. And you know, my brother had to be was pardoned for this. But this is something that was you know, it was just in a moment. It wasn't even his pipe, and here you get burdened with a criminal conviction. This is something that we need as a society to address. And if we're going to be going down, since we're going down the road of legalization, I believe we have to address this. And I personally believe we need to give people a full amnesty for any crimes that have anything to do with this. Like, for gosh sakes, how many people's lives have been ruined for doing nothing more than growing a plant?
Yeah.
And I also believe that it starts with police, too. Like, a police officer always has the discretion whether or not to put someone in the system. And I think that if we can better train police officers to realize that, hey, cannabis isn't the enemy here, there would be so many people like your brother smoking from a pipe that our CMP officer should have said, look, like, that's illegal, but have a nice day. Like, shaming and wrecking someone's name for the rest of their life because of plant, as far as I'm concerned, that's the most atrocious human rights violation of our time.
Absolutely, and to play the devil's advocate, your second week on your job at a big rock festival, your supervisor's watching you, and you catch this, and it's like you're basically being forced to do it because it's your job. And what kind of system do we have set up that we're forcing these people to do that? Because I'm sure that police officer, maybe they wanted to do it. I don't know. I mean, I certainly think that a more experienced officer with some wisdom would have done that. And like you said, and that goes directly to what you're saying, some training would go a long way there, and especially to have some sensitivity towards that, which obviously back then there was probably none. But I think an experienced officer would know the difference. I know in my former occupation, if I had somebody that was quite intoxicated off alcohol or somebody who was maybe medicated from cannabis, I certainly had a much different opinion of who I was going to let on my bus for a long ride.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like, so, I mean, the drunk guy or the guy high on cannabis, I would bet my life on the guy high on cannabis before I would the drunk guy, right? Or woman,
Absolutely.
for instance,
Yeah, totally
Absolutely.
different. Yeah, one's intoxicated and the other one's not.
Well, and that begs the question, too, about high driving. Like, this really irks me because it's like, how do you, like, as far as I'm concerned, like, drunk driving laws are fraud. There was this guy who actually participated in a study at the University of Saskatchewan, and he's on this, like, fancy police board, and he outright admitted, granted he was drinking, but I mean, that's the truth serum, if you will. He admitted that drunk driving laws are basically arbitrary BS. Like, there's no articulate scientific way to judge intoxication. Not to say that drunk driving laws shouldn't exist. I'm totally anti-drunk, like, alcohol driving. But in the same regard, we haven't come up with an infallible test that doesn't impeach upon our human rights as Canadian citizens. And I feel like trying to enact some kind of legislation to prohibit high driving is just that. Like, it's asinine. Your opinion, Mike?
I totally agree, and I think it even goes back to almost the beginning of our conversation, where this is a complex plant. This is not simplified. This is not alcohol. When I was saying how the alcohol framework was being pressed onto cannabis, and here again, I know patients that have ADHD that are off of all ADHD medication that are living a fine, productive, and excellent life. But if they did not medicate with their cannabis before they operated their vehicle, they could not drive. Now, so do they have to use the pharmaceutical? Or if they're being properly medicated and they can drive perfectly fine on it, are they really intoxicated? These are complicated questions. And now for me, because I do want this to happen and I don't want to take more time, so if we have to say, look, for recreational users, if you are using cannabis, treat it like alcohol. Don't, get your friend to drive. Use your cannabis after you get home. If for recreational users, let's keep it simple like that till we understand it better. For medical users, it's much more complicated, and we're going to have to deal with that one patient at a time, I think.
Yeah, I know myself.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Like in my scenario with when I go out with the wife, she drives. She's the driver, and I'm in the I can vaporize in the passenger seat. Yep.
Yeah.
But, we have. Oh, go ahead. Nope. Go ahead.
I'm way more interested in what you have to say. I'm sorry, I keep jumping in.
Oh, I was just going to say we had previously had Colton Turner, who's a young Crohn's patient, on the radio, and he can't even actually obtain his first driver's license because of the way in which they test for cannabis, it's like nanograms or something. So
it's 5 nanograms. Yep,
yeah,
5
so
nanograms.
Just his daily amount of medication would preclude him from driving. Whether or not he's intoxicated or a danger to himself or anyone else has not been proven viable, but they're setting these arbitrary notions of what is deemed intoxication.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's problematic. Like, I think that when you're a high driver, if you will, your heightened awareness makes you a safer driver. Like, there's some people sober that shouldn't be driving, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that by, like, police services saying, oh, well, this high driving stuff, I think that it's propaganda. It's just another form of propaganda, and people in the cannabis industry need to push back against regulation in terms of driving, because we'll be the ones that will lose our licenses unjustly, right? So
Alicia, during that interview with Colton, they mentioned that his regular nanogram reading is like 35.
Yeah.
So like he couldn't even get close, even first thing in the morning, even to get a license to drive.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
that's why
too,
it's so
like,
complex.
how long does THC or CBD or whatever cannabinoid you really want to arbitrarily choose, how long does it actually stay in your body? And I mean, everyone's body is so vastly different. Like, trying to prohibit high driving or saying that it's a social nuisance is just unequivocally stomping on our charter rights, which, I mean, Justin Trudeau's father was the one who brought us the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So if he wants to act contrary to what the legacy of what his father has created, per se, high driving and going after it would be just as bad as going after people who were gay and wanting to be in relationships, right? Like, we're at a time in our history where that's socially acceptable to be gay and have different social or sexual orientations, right? So I just, when does that cannabis, like, social justice come in, right?
And you know the thing about the complexity of driving and patients driving and stuff like that, it's something that leads to what you're talking about with police and stuff. To me, it's people are going to be using this, and they're going to be using it as a form of opportunism, and they see opportunity to increase their budgets, to increase their staff, and use propaganda. And hey, you know, cannabis has been a propaganda tool for 100 years. It's the same language they're used to saying. They just have to tweak the arguments a little bit, and then you can get some more money for some more policing. And you know what? That's sort of how our society works. And people, we have to educate people, A, about driving, and B, that this is what happens when these things are happening. So I think that it's as we go through this change, we're going to have to take each subject, and you're going to have to look at it and say, okay, you know, how is this going to be applying? How is opportunism affecting what people are doing in this? Because even in the people on the inside of the industry are going to be affected by these changes and stuff like that, in both a negative and a positive way. So these are things that people involved have to keep in mind, and I think that's why people, even though we're getting close to a more liberalized world of cannabis use, we have to keep our eye on the prize and remember what's important, and that is that cannabis is a medicine, and that people need it as a medicine, and as it becomes legalized recreationally, we need to protect it as a medicine.
Oh, for sure.
That's my I think so.
Yes.
Because I think we're so naive to think that there's like this distinction between recreation and medical. And I don't, like, I get it, but in the same regard, like, that line is pretty much blurred. Because say you didn't realize that cannabis was a medicine and you went and smoked a joint with your friends after school, and you're like, by golly, my ADHD or ADD is like really subsided. Then that's a medicinal purpose, right? Like, where with alcohol, you can't really say, well, I got really drunk and threw up and, you know, crashed my car. Well, that's a medicine. You know what I mean? Like, they're
no, absolutely. And this
totally different.
This is very, very complicated. And something that I don't want to even say too much about, because I don't feel at all that I would have anything to contribute positively to the constructive argument, other than I hope that better people than me will take up the fight.
Yeah. Here's something that you can get involved in. Earlier at the beginning of the program, we were talking about the CCBO situation here in Ontario, and we had a survey and we had all kinds of information that was sent into the government. Mind you, people weren't given much time and it wasn't really advertised very well. Is there something like that going on in Saskatoon?
Isn't that interesting that you bring that up? In Saskatchewan, there is a survey, and it has to be filled out, I believe, by the 29th of September. It's by the end of the month, and it is a survey. So Saskatchewan residents over the age of 18 can contribute and answer questions about which way they want to see the cannabis industry governed. And certainly, we hope that people will, that will have responsible regulation and legislation, and just let the private sector take care of cannabis here. We're hoping, Saskatchewan, as somebody who's in this industry, but also who feels a strong, strength with the labor movement here. I say that with some reservation. We do have some excellent people that work in Saskatchewan that would and I'm sure there's people within the LCBO organization that are excited about this organization and want to contribute cannabis in a positive way too. But we certainly hope or I certainly hope that a private system is able to go here, and people that are enthusiastic and care about cannabis as a medicine, and care about educating and informing people about cannabis is the way that we go here in Saskatchewan. So please look it up. If you just type in Saskatchewan cannabis survey on your Google, it'll definitely take you to where you need to go to fill in this very important survey.
How do you feel the questions? Do you feel like the questions are twisted a certain way, or is it just basically?
I'll say that there's a lot left to be open to interpretation. To me, it looked very obvious that there was. It seemed interesting. When you see questions and you think to yourself, like, if they were ordered in 1 to 5, but they're not ordered in 1 to 5, and there does seem to be a little bit. That does seem to be a little bit strange to me, but it's almost funny, and I hope that anybody over the age of 18 sees through it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Alicia, have you got any more questions for Mike?
I guess in terms of interpreting the data that manifests as a result of this survey, what do you, in your opinion, think that the Saskatchewan government will do with this? Are they going to go totally opposite and say, well, whatever the taxpayer wants, so we're going to do exactly the opposite?
Well,
or are they going to actually right?
In Saskatchewan, I think for cannabis right now, maybe cannabis in Saskatchewan, I'm hoping for a private system ran by cannabis people for cannabis people. So that wouldn't be a government-controlled system. And the current right-wing Saskatchewan Party government, led by now Brad Wall will seem to be who's going to see who's leading it. But they're in the business right now of closing government-run liquor stores. They just closed their provincial bus company. They're scaling back stuff. They're dealing with all sorts of stuff. So I think it would be going against their ideology to promote a government-run cannabis system in Saskatchewan. I would be quite surprised if they went that way myself, based on what they're doing with other things. Now, if we were at a different time, 20 years ago in Saskatchewan, I would absolutely say it would be ran by a government-run organization, because Saskatchewan used to have very strong organizations like the LCBO, but in the last 10 years, our Conservative government has done a lot of work to dismantle those institutions and the labor movement in Saskatchewan. So I don't think right now the government would be interested in starting a new government organization right now anyways. But, with future governments, you'll never know. But we certainly hope not. We believe that our movement that's come up through Saskatchewan, through the people like Pat and Best Buds in Regina, the Best Bud Society, they've been working hard for years to help sick people with cannabis. And it would be a shame if they weren't given an opportunity to continue doing what they were doing, and because they know what they're doing, and people like working with them and working with us up here at BBS in Saskatoon. But I'm simply riding on the shoulders of giants. Sorry to steal that saying, but there's a lot of people like you folks that have been doing a lot of work, and it makes my life a little bit easier in working with and explaining cannabis to the people. So I've got to say thank you to you guys as well. But if I could take a couple seconds to throw out a couple thanks there. I don't know if it's time yet for me to do that yet.
Yeah. You
cool. Well, I'm working. We're helping medical patients here at BBS in Saskatoon, and come on, drop in and see us. We're on 2nd Avenue North, 139 2nd Avenue North. Come on, drop by us. We've also got a website, Best Bud Society, if you want to see what we're about. We're really in helping medical patients, and we've been doing it quite well, I think, for some time, and people are really enjoying us. We also have a dispensary in Regina, some business there at Cornwall Street, and we're also opened up in Edmonton now. So if you're around Edmonton, please come and see the Best Bud there in Edmonton. Look us up. You can definitely find us. And also in Saskatoon here, I just want to throw a big thanks out to the community, because I've been up in Saskatoon. I'm a Saskatchewan guy most of my life. Started out in Toronto, but ended up here and spent most of my life here. But I've been in Saskatoon for 5 years, but only really getting to know the cannabis community here lately in the last few months. And I just got to say a big shout out to these people. There's a wonderful group of people in Saskatoon and Saskatchewan, but in Saskatoon, that have been coming in and just been so open and helping me understand cannabis, and have taught me so much in such a short amount of time. So I just got to say thanks to those people. And if you're in Saskatoon and you need help, come talk to us. If you're looking for something to help you with your medicine, maybe go see those guys on Circle Drive. You've got the Greenhouse Black and Gift Ware. They're just wonderfully educated, and they can really help medical patients find out what they need. Or check out my friend Kelsey. She works at a place called The Joint in Saskatoon. Real knowledgeable lady. She can help you get what you need for that stuff too. Thank you so much, you guys. I have to say I am so appreciative that you had me on your guys' show here tonight. I enjoy it so much, and everything that I've got from listening to you, and so thank you so much.
We appreciate you coming on the program. Thanks for the kind words. Before we let you go, though, I'm going to just check to see if Alicia's got a question for you.
I guess in terms of 420, is there something in the works for like a big legalization 420, or how does your organization deal with 420?
Well, you know what? We've got mixed emotions about 420, because 420 is a little bit of a recreational celebration, we think. And I mean, it's awesome for raising awareness, though. It's awesome for raising awareness. So if we can help raise awareness, so from a medical perspective, I want to say that I think 420 is awesome for raising cannabis awareness. But you know what? This year, I hope that we can maybe use that date as a time to come together as a group. And you know what? Maybe if you're not used to going out to a 420 celebration, get yourself out to one. Bring your family. Let's show everybody that, you know what? Cannabis isn't just for Cheech and Chong or the stereotypical people that you might expect to be using it. We all use it. We are all cannabis, and we are all in this together.
That's it. Yes, we are. Exactly. And my last question to you, Mike, is with the dispensaries, we're seeing all these raids in Toronto and a few other places. You guys having any problems out there?
You know, we are 100% just working with medical patients, and we've been having great support from the community. You know, I have to say that we have not had any issues. But you know, there have been some dispensaries in Saskatchewan that have had some problems. You hear, of course, stories that maybe there was something going on more there than was supposed to be happening. You know, I'm not certain. I don't know for sure. But you know, we certainly try to keep a profile that's somewhat discreet, because we certainly want to be in the community for our patients, and we wouldn't want to jeopardize it, that's for sure. But you know what? Things have been working out very well here, and we're very, very happy to be here in Saskatchewan helping people.
Super.
And Alberta as well.
It's good.
And so when you say that you don't want to attract that kind of like stereotypical, like Bob Marley energy, not that I have anything against Bob Marley, but so you're pretty discreet, hey? Like you don't have big marijuana leaves outside of your door and stuff.
No, we don't. It's a store that looks like it's a place for patients. So if you are walking along and you saw a place that welcomes patients, we welcome all people, but we definitely welcome patients and patients with cannabis. But we do have a very discreet. We don't promote really the stereotypical quote unquote chronic image. There's nothing wrong with it, but as somebody who is a connoisseur of the flower, you wouldn't get me caught dead smoking anything that looks like that.
Well, Mike, it's been great talking to you. Before we run down things here, you got to check with Alicia to see if she's got a shout out.
I would just like to send a shout out to Saskatoon, and I'm new here. Well, I used to live here before, but I moved back. And so, yeah, just everyone in Saskatoon, and also...
Shout out to the city of Saskatoon.
Yeah, and also to Pace Radio Show, everyone who's behind it and in front of it. Much appreciated, and love you all.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm going to throw a shout out to a young lady by the name of Lindsay. She's an employee at the Toronto Hemp Company in downtown Toronto. We stopped in there on Saturday during the Karma Cup, and she bought a few things off of her, and there was no pressure, no push, no nothing. It was just a nice, relaxing atmosphere. So shout out to Lindsay for her sales technique. Just a reminder, yes, I will be back next Wednesday. It was awesome. We had a good time. Back next Wednesday with joint host Kim Cooper and her guests as we continue to promote those who are fighting to bring an end to cannabis prohibition, as well as spread the education and information around. You can find us on Facebook. We're on Twitter at Pace Radio. We're on Instagram as Pace Radio Show. We can be found on the web at pace-online.ca. Thank yous, as always, to our sponsors, friendly folks at BMA Hydroponics in Belleville at bmahydroponics.com. CC Nexus, who is Canada's largest seed wholesaler. They can be found at ccnexus.global. Also, the Canadays right here in Campbellford for giving me this great window spot where I can watch everybody drive by. I even had someone stick their tongue out at me. Can you just imagine that? And
showing the love.
That's right, showing the love. Thanks to you, Mike. It was great to have you on. You're with BBS Saskatoon. We'll have to have you on again in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you too, Alicia. It was just great to get to meet you. I as a fan now I can get to say that. So.
Awesome.
Alicia, as always, thank you for everything. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in the program. We always need listeners. It's always nice that you're there. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.
When someone's pissing you off, don't get angry. No. Reach in your pocket and get stoned, my friend.
Okay.
Don't be bitter.
So what are you doing? Nothing. Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have had it.